Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Trevor with Make Our Experiment, and today is part 2 of the marketing discussion with James from Epilog Laser. So, it's literally been 10 seconds since we stopped the last video that we released. It's either going to be the week after, maybe a couple weeks. But we're going to continue our conversation on marketing laser business, and business questions in general. So, ready to get started?
Let's go.
All right, so the burning question. Now, with how the market is today, with how many laser owners there are, with how many have them in their house, do you see it as still being a smart idea to try to start a laser business? And if you do, how would you go about that if it were you?
You know, I think what you're really asking is the market saturated?
Correct.
Is there enough room for another laser company out there that's doing custom engraving?
Exactly.
And I really think there are. You know, I don't feel like there's saturation because there's always new ideas coming out.
I agree with that.
If you're creating something that everyone else is creating, that's going to be really difficult to start a business.
And that, before we get too far into this, I think that's a good point. If you're somebody that doesn't know how to design your own files and doesn't know how to design your own products and buys them from Etsy or buys them from memberships or whatever it might be, eventually you're going to hit a wall where everybody is selling the exact same thing because you're all buying it from the exact same people. So I do agree that it's not oversaturated if you are comfortable creating your own stuff.
Exactly. And I would say that even if it was saturated, you really need to be comfortable with some kind of design. And if you're not, someone that's with you needs to be. And that could be your high schooler. It can be...
Honestly,
that's why you had kids, right?
Oh, yeah. Built-in help, right? I think when my daughter is in high school, when she is at that age, she is so artsy and crafty that I think when she realizes what I actually have in the garage and what they do, game over. Like, she's going to be designing things all the time. And I do believe that, you know, my parents have a laser and they've done it. And my dad has designed things from scratch. But from that perspective, like, I know more technology than they know. Right. And that's just going to keep happening. My daughter's going to know more about technology than me eventually. It's going to happen. Yeah, definitely. And you definitely need a designer on staff, or it needs to be you, somebody.
It doesn't have to be, you don't have to know complicated design.
No.
You need to know kind of the basics of what typography looks good together. You know, how do you lay something out that is going to be visually pleasing? It doesn't have to be to this extent of, have an art degree to be able to do this. I mean, I don't want to overwhelm someone with this idea either, but having those basics and feeling comfortable doing it, that's really important.
And I do think that if you don't have somebody you know that is good at this, there are companies that have, design bundles or font bundles where they're elements that they might have a lot of border designs or a lot of floral designs or a lot of typography designs and fonts. And you can make your own from standard pieces, but you have to know how to put them together, make them look good. Another thing I think doesn't really get talked about a lot, but I think is hugely valuable, is if you do run a business, if you go to local colleges, they do have internship programs where students get credits. And, it can be like a work job placement type of thing where they get experience doing design and working with usually the graphic design department, I would say, is most likely where you're going to pull from.
Or art schools. Art schools can be huge for that.
And there's high school art schools.
Oh,
and
definitely.
There's, high schoolers can always use like an extra bit of cash. And most of them are wanting to do and make cool things, and they just don't have the machinery.
Right, exactly. And they're able to use that in their portfolio when they're trying to get into the art school after high school. And, and that's really impressive to people.
It is. And I do think that's where, if you don't have that built-in designer in your family, that looking at schools is a good way to do it. You can also, one thing I found in the past is I may own a machine. They may want to make things on the machine. If you trade services, like I want to trade design, so I want you to design stuff for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can give them a cut of anything that sells from the design or however you want to handle it.
Right.
And then they, you know, if they want to make something, you just don't charge them for machine time. And you can have trades.
Sure.
Like people do trades all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great way to get help if you are not comfortable with designing yourself.
Another place too is, you know, every college, every university now has a makerspace.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I'm blown away by the size of some of these. I know that I visited like Case Westerns, and they have, I think, 4 floors of a building.
Oh, yeah.
Now. I mean, it's just really crazy. When I was getting my MBA, they had the makerspace. The guy who actually ran the makerspace at GU come in and talk to us, and he showed off some of his equipment, and one of them was the Epilog. So that was really nice to see. Everyone that heard me talking about this laser in all my classes was actually able to say, that's what you do.
Yeah, that's good.
But there's so many students out there that are really learning the insides and outsides of the laser in these maker spaces, that if you contact the person who's running that space, they're going to be able to put you in touch with them.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And one thing I think is important too is you don't have to own a laser to run a laser business.
Yeah.
I will agree it's better for your profit margins.
Sure. It's
better for your availability. It's more flexible to have your own, but it's not required.
Right.
I started out without a laser. I found somebody where I lived that had one, and I could pay them to make the item, and then I could resell it. Now, it does make you charge more because you're paying basically to get it made for you.
Right. But you're building your client base.
You are, correct. And that's where you can find out if it's a viable business.
Right.
Without a lot of that upfront cost. So you could do this in a very strategic way. And I am the first to be the most cautious when it comes to investing a lot of money into things. Because even when I did it, I stepped. So I started with paying somebody to make it for me. That became good friends. They taught me a whole lot about lasers. And actually, their Pinpoint Creative Studio, I owe them a shout out because they got me to where I am. They had an Epilog Zing. They taught me how to use it. It got to the point where I was such good friends, they would let me run it and they wouldn't even be there. And I learned a lot from them in design. Then I started looking into lasers, bought one, started working again, and it was a hobbyist machine. Figured out that I needed to upgrade. Then I found an Epilog, started working with that Epilog. And then as I started doing bigger and bigger items, I needed a bigger machine. But I didn't start by buying it.
Right.
I went back to them and said, hey, you guys bought a bigger machine now. Can you make these bigger items? I just need you to cut certain pieces. I would cut some pieces on mine and I'd cut some pieces on the bigger one. And then I would step again and be able to make bigger products now, but I'd outsource pieces of it.
Right.
And this is a good point too, is if you have a CNC that's, you know, some of these hobbyist CNC machines, you can cut a lot of sign backers and a lot of things really big. And then you can fine cut with a laser all the little letters and designs you want to do.
Right.
And then marry the two together.
Yeah, the two work so well together.
Oh,
I've talked to so many woodworkers that love having both side by side because they both have their place in their workshop. And
I still want a CNC.
Yeah.
So I totally get that. And I think people don't realize that you can really combine a lot of things.
Right.
And you don't have to expect the laser to do it all.
Right.
And I don't think that gets talked about enough.
Right. I agree. Yeah. You know, the other thing is go in with a good business plan.
For sure.
You know, if you don't really understand everything from the start of your business to how you're actually going to be making a profit and when you think that's going to happen, you know, that's really a bad way to start a business with a laser.
Yeah, 100% agree.
You need to understand, like we've talked about in the last video, how to price your product. How are you going to get those customers? How are you going to build that customer base? You know, and putting that in writing is really going to help you, kind of formalize that and really make that a goal for your business rather than starting the business with the laser before you have any idea what you're going to do with it. That can be dangerous. I know people that have been very successful doing that, but
I know people that have failed.
Exactly.
And that's a very good point, though. Like, definitely do your homework.
Yeah.
If you want to make a specific product, make sure whatever machine you buy is capable. Because I've known a lot of people that didn't do that.
Right. They think they're going to be able to do the hydro flasks, the wine bottles, in a machine that doesn't have enough Z depth to it.
Exactly. And if you do 10 minutes of research,
Yeah.
you can find that out.
Yeah.
But it may not be, I would say, marketed against.
Right. I mean,
they don't make it sound like you can't do it.
Right.
But they also don't tell you can do it.
Right.
And I think that's really where you just need to do your homework.
Right.
Okay. Now, this is a question that I have struggled with.
Okay.
And I'm fortunate enough that I've made relationships with people in business and in marketing that if I have marketing questions, I have 2 to 3 people I can go to now. Starting off, that wasn't the case.
Sure.
And I know when it comes to business and being able to make things, like, I'm really good at making. I am really terrible at selling for the most part. And I'm terrible at marketing. Like, aesthetically designed pages in your website, not my strong point. So with businesses, and if they're getting started and they're making things, do you feel like they need a dedicated marketing person? Somebody that's, that's all they do? Or maybe there's services that they could pay when they need it that are also reputable?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, as a marketer, yes, you need someone who's not.
I mean, biased question, right?
A lot of marketing is common sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it in trying to find your clients. How good are you as a salesperson, and how good are you at understanding what people are looking for that a marketer would typically do? I don't think in a lot of situations you need to have someone who's dedicated to marketing. But when you're putting together your website, you need that service. And like you were saying, there's a lot of ways that are inexpensive that you can create a really beautiful web page, and that is easy to navigate, that makes it clear what your offerings are, makes it easy to buy off your website. So finding those services out there, I think, is really important, more so than having someone who's specific to marketing. Yeah. But like we were talking before, on the designer side, find that intern.
Oh yeah.
It's something on the side that would be, not a lot of extra time for someone who's actually studying marketing, and they might have a new idea beyond what you've thought of.
Oh yeah.
And they're probably more familiar with a lot of the latest, greatest,
for sure,
TikTok and everything else that's out there.
So that's a good point. And this is something I've thought of doing, is finding somebody that's in college that is into marketing, social media, that whole realm. Now, I'm on social media. I have social media. I feel like I've done an okay job at growing my following. Now, it's not like I haven't exploded. It's been a slow road, but I've grown. And what I have thought of doing is getting somebody to just come to the shop for 1 or 2 days out of the week and film what I do, because honestly, when I film, is literally like trying to be the one-man Superman show. I try to film everything myself, design everything myself, make everything myself, do my own website, edit my own video, and it is a hindrance. Now, I do it because I don't have a giant cash flow to be able to outsource it all. And I think a lot of people can agree that they probably can't. Now, Fiverr, I think, is a good way to do, say, like most editing. You can get a lot done pretty quickly. Yeah. But they may not do it the way you want, which is where having somebody that you interact with and comes to the shop and you can talk them through it is a lot more valuable to me. But I do think that you can hire that out. Honestly, most people that I've met lately that are into marketing and can do the social media stuff, are like, still in college or even high school.
Oh yeah.
And they're, tens of thousands, if not millions of followers on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know how you do it.
I encouraged you to come up with a custom dance around
Oh,
Laser for TikTok.
I mean, I could try,
but
but I do think that that's something that in the future would be nice, is if, I could focus on making the projects and just focusing on that piece. And if somebody else can figure out, oh, here's where I need to move the camera, or here's how I'm going to cut it for social media, like that is potentially what will elevate your business further than anything else.
Right. And I'm taking that video and I'm going to create an Instagram cut and a TikTok cut and reuse it across every
and a
platform.
YouTube short.
Exactly.
And then that's something that I don't do well. And I think I could do better. If you're doing this full time, either you need to do that or you need to have somebody that you can outsource to do that. I'm fortunate enough that I work full time and I don't have to depend on this.
Right.
But working full time is also why I can't get enough time to do that. So I would say definitely in this day and age, social media is a must.
Yeah.
TikTok is almost a must at this point.
Right.
Instagram is a must. YouTube shorts, I think, are great if you don't want to do a full-on video. I know a lot of people don't want to do YouTube. They see that as being overwhelming and too involved. Mostly
it shows
because
up higher on Google than anything else.
It does show up higher on Google.
If you're looking for a way to move up those organic listings, YouTube video is the way to go.
And YouTube is the second biggest search engine. So if people aren't on Google searching, they're on YouTube searching.
Right.
So I do think that that's valuable. And I do think you need to, the more I do this, you need to outsource what you're not good at, because you're going to not do it as good as it could be. You might get okay enough to do well.
Right.
But not as okay as you could be with somebody that specializes in that.
Yeah, it's just so important to know your own strengths.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
I know my strengths, and I hire people that can do the things that I don't know how to do. And that's the key to any business is,
correct.
Hire good people, let them do their jobs, get out of the way.
And I will say that if you don't have the funds to hire somebody, like start saving for a specific thing you want done. Like if you want a website done, start putting money aside to hire a website designer and have a very clear path going in of what you want the website to be and look like. The more information you can give them, the more of it is thought out, and you just don't know how to do the mechanics of setting it up.
Exactly.
You can hire that one piece and just make sure that it's... So here's a big thing on websites is the first website I ever had was WordPress. If you do not know technology and you do not know websites, do not do WordPress because you are going to have to do some maintenance to your site.
Yeah.
Whether that's updating a photo or changing a price or whatever it might be. So going with a website builder isn't always a bad idea. So I use Shopify. You use Shopify. And I'm not saying that's the one to go with.
Right.
But it's proof that even a business that has a dedicated web person still did not use WordPress. Now it is free. You still have to pay for hosting and domains or whatever.
Right.
But having something that's already built around selling products is going to get you elevated already and make it easier.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Now, a question that I'm not sure is really as popular anymore because of the internet,
right? Because
of COVID, is do you feel businesses like laser businesses or product businesses need to have a storefront? And
this is something that an answer that changed over the years for me. I mean, there was the time where you needed that storefront to look professional.
For sure.
And how Etsy and how the gig economy has worked is that people trust you out of your garage now.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, it's been an amazing turnaround, I would say, over the last 10 years to have that happen. That, you can work with a large company now and you don't need to have that storefront. Correct. You don't need to have that investment. where it can pay off is, if you are creating kind of a gift store type of thing.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to really use that traffic that you're getting on the street because you're in a popular area. Storefront could be very valuable at that point.
I agree.
Because you are able to, maybe you're in a tourist area. So you're able
Vegas.
to take... Yes, because you live right on the strip, right?
Oh, yeah.
But no, I don't think a storefront really is necessary in that same way anymore. We occasionally will have a customer open up in a mall. Mm-hmm. I know I was walking through a mall not too long ago, and when I was back visiting some family, and there was an Epilog sitting in the middle of the mall. It was very exciting for me.
And that's something that is a big thing, mm-hmm. because storefronts are not cheap to have.
No, exactly.
Now, I will agree, I do see benefits to having a dedicated space for your business, mm-hmm. that is not out of your garage, where you also store the kids' bicycles or, the refrigerator for all the drinks, mm-hmm. whatever it might be.
Right.
I do see a value in having a space outside of the home.
Sure.
That if you need to actually, I would say, dedicate time and focus, it's very hard to do that if you're at home, mm-hmm. to focus with children or whatever else. But it's a huge cost.
Yeah.
So I know that at least here in Vegas, a small, 900 square foot storefront would be in the $3,000 to $4,000 a month range, which is already you're in debt starting the month out.
Exactly.
And that is just not viable for a lot of people.
I understand that, definitely.
I do think if you're in a touristy spot, it makes slightly more sense.
Right.
Depending on what you sell.
Right. Exactly.
So if you're selling, because I'm in Las Vegas, if you're selling Vegas tumblers or Vegas specifics that people want to buy, it might make sense.
It might make sense if you're, I would say it'd have to be even higher end than that to make sense. Oh, yeah. I mean, you're going to have really good margins on your products to have that make sense.
Yeah. And even now, I walk through the popular malls here, and there's still just not as much foot traffic as there used to be.
No, definitely not.
So I don't think that they're as valuable to have a storefront. I think, honestly, social media presence and an online presence is more important than a storefront.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
Okay. This is one that I could actually gain some insight on. Is how to build what we'd call the big accounts. And this is on the client side. Mm-hmm. A client that keeps coming back, keeps wanting things done. I did have one of these, and then they outsourced everything to China. So my business went from making a couple $1,000s a month with that one client to all of a sudden nothing, mm-hmm. which was a huge hit.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot that I could do to retain them, because for reference, in this case, it was engraving tumblers and flasks.
Okay.
I was charging, because they would bring the flasks and they'd bring the products, right? I was charging maybe $2 to $3 to custom engrave a mug. A keychain was $1. A flask was like $2. Mm-hmm. Like, these were not expensive.
Right.
And I only did them that cheap because they would constantly bring more stuff. And it was one of those things where eventually enough got to enough. And I was like, I cannot meet these prices you're wanting me to meet. It's like because it wasn't like, oh, here's my product 3 weeks in advance. I need it done in 3 weeks. It was, here's a pallet of product. I need it done on Monday and it's Friday.
Yeah.
And I would do that. I would engrave them over the weekend. I would, lose all time with family to do this at a cheap rate. And it still was not good enough for them.
And you're still married.
And I'm still married.
That's impressive.
She put up with a lot. But that's what I mean. Like, I had a big account, but they just wanted too much out of me.
Right. And those are the kind of big accounts you don't want.
Correct.
Someone who's going to nickel and dime you is not a valued account in the long run, because like you said, you're giving up your life at that point. Mm-hmm. You have to show your value to the customer. And I don't think in that situation there would have been an answer that would have kept them on.
I honestly don't think there is.
Yeah.
Because they were already looking to outsource them all the way to China to begin with. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like it was inevitable. It was never gonna stay with me long term.
You know, the thing I would do as a marketer is in a situation where I'm working with a big customer like that, I'd make sure that I've got a good relationship with my contact there, where they understand, you know, who I am and that I need to make money too, and that I'm going to give them a really good product every time, but don't ask so much of me that I'm going to go out of business so that you get the cheapest price possible.
Correct.
You know, I can tell you Epilog has many relationships with some of our, you know, metalworking companies and things like that we've built those relationships over the years. And we pay more money in a lot of situations than we would if we outsourced to China for the same part.
Correct.
But we've got that relationship.
Yeah.
And we understand that, you know, if we drive down the price so much on what we're buying by negotiating against that price we could get in China, we don't have that relationship going forward.
Correct.
Not every company is going to be that way. So you have to be careful, I think, in who your big accounts are. Because if you're building your business around big accounts, that can be really dangerous in a lot of situations.
It is, because you lose one and you're done.
Exactly. So, you know, I would say ones that grow organically are the ones that are going to be most successful for you, because you've got that relationship, and you know, maybe they see some additional things that you can offer to them beyond the Yeti mug that, you know, oh my gosh, you know, we just moved into a new building and we need signage for every office door. Suddenly, you know, those kind of relationships are the big business that I would really focus on. Things that where there's value both ways. Where both they see value in you and what you're offering, and you know, they're not going price per price, because that's not going to be effective in the long run.
Well, and this is where, like we talked about in the last video, niching down into something that isn't being done by a lot of people. Like tumblers, done by everybody. Keychains, glasses, done by everybody. Now, when you talk about some custom signage, like ADA, compliant signage, isn't done by as many people because there's more rules to what has to be done. And if you have that niche down and you are proving that you're one of a handful of people instead of one of hundreds of thousands of people, that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And I will admit, like, because this was a Tumblr account, a Flask account, it was something anybody could do. And now, if they plan ahead and they order them correctly, they will get them properly, right? Now, with supply chain issues, I have had one time where they came back to me and said, well, I need you to do this because we didn't get our shipment in. And I'm like, you left me. Like, I don't need it at this point, thankfully, because of how I'm trying to change the business.
So was it twice as much for the rush charge?
Yeah. No, I was like, look, like, I'm not going to do it for the price I used to because you outsourced this completely. And by doing that, you said you did not value what I was doing for you. So if you want it done, I was like, it's going to be double what it was. And like, they didn't want to do it. I'm like, well, that's your prerogative. Like, that doesn't affect me anymore.
Yeah, it really comes down to how important is that product to them.
Yeah. And how important is your family time and your personal time to you?
Yeah, because you can't undervalue that. I mean, it's so important to understand that.
Well, it sets a precedent.
Yes.
Like, if you're willing to do that once, it shows that you're willing to do that again.
Yeah.
And by showing them that I would lower the price because they kept bringing stuff in, I set that precedent that they could keep trying to do that.
Right.
And eventually it was just enough's enough. Either you want me or you don't. And if you don't, then I'm not going to work with you anymore. Right. And that's fine. You have to be willing to walk away. Yeah. And not just keep giving it.
Right. Knowing when to walk away is really important sometimes in those situations.
Having the big account is good. But you also need to be able to say no to the big account when it makes sense to say no.
I would agree.
So for me, and we've had a lot of conversations about this, I want to overhaul my business, period. I want to get out of making custom products for people. And it's because I personally feel like a lot of the products people seem to want around me are things that anybody can do. And they're going to get in that same situation where they try to drive down the cost, and I'm just not going to be able to do that. And I'm trying to focus more on what I can bring to the table that I don't see a lot of other people do, which is more on education and training. And I know lasers pretty well, and I've literally taken one apart completely and put it back together. So I'm very familiar with that stuff. Now that leads to video. So I focus on YouTube videos, and I will say that it does bring in a small recurring revenue every month if you are willing to put in the time. Video is no joke. It takes 8 hours to make a video sometimes, and it's going to suck up a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I do see personally the value of having video in my business. Even like we talked about, small clips on TikTok and Instagram, YouTube Shorts, whatever it might be. But when it comes to having dedicated video, how do you think that's going to play? Does it play an important part in everybody's business? Is it something that really only applies to certain people? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I've mentioned this before too, is video, well, number one, it's exciting for the viewer.
If it's done well.
If it's done well, yes. Yeah. But especially with the laser, it's exciting for the viewer because when you're seeing that being created, I know that at a trade show, I can't stop watching it run.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyone that you put in front of a laser is going to be excited about seeing it run.
Yes.
So it's not just about the video of the final product. It's making sure that you're showing that process of what you used to create it or how you created it, because that's really what's going to excite people.
So I think one good thing about this question is it's not only like you don't have to do YouTube. You don't have to publish it to social media. But I do find that clients appreciate it. So I've had, and this is another good thing you can do, is I've had clients who want a sign made. Because I started videoing my signs early on for YouTube, people started coming to me to make their custom sign, specifically to make a video for YouTube about it.
Love it.
To help market their business, because when their business is in the video, they're getting free exposure to some extent. And that honestly became a way I could upcharge for a sign was, hey, if you want a sign made, it's this price. If you'd like me to put it on my YouTube channel with a full video of how I made it, it's going to add this cost, but it's going to be out there for as long as that channel exists. And it could get you nothing. It could get you no exposure, or you could get a lot of exposure. It honestly, the YouTube algorithm, it's a freaking guess.
Sure.
But I noticed that it did offer an opportunity in marketing, which is weird, right? Like I'm trying to market my business and other businesses want me to market their business through my business.
Yeah. Well, what you have to remember in that situation is there's one of me at every one of those businesses that's looking for something interesting to put on our Facebook page and on our Instagram and, something we haven't already done. And that's providing them with instantaneous marketing, which is just, I love that. I love when someone can bring that to me and say, I've got something exciting for you.
Definitely.
It's going to be in video. And I think that's brilliant that you offer it that way and charge them extra for it.
Well, because it's a lot of work. Now, there might be times when I am going to do it anyway. Like I'm going to do the video regardless. But I may not publish it for YouTube. I may just do like little clips here and there for Instagram. But it gives you an opportunity to upcharge for a service if they're requesting that. Now, I do think that like you shouldn't just do it for free. Because it is so much work. But it does give you a unique opportunity, I think, to not only sell them a product, but upsell them on a service that honestly I didn't think was a thing. Like I didn't realize that by marketing my business, people would want me to market their business.
Right.
And that became a unique opportunity that I just didn't realize.
Yeah. Do you find that you need to get their permission to do this, or?
So usually what would occur is they would come to me and say they wanted it. And I'm like, okay, but if you want it, it's going to be done however I want to do it. I'm not going to do approvals.
Gotcha.
I'm not going to do, you know, whatever.
Because you're not going to be able to create their sign again, regardless.
Correct.
So,
like,
yeah.
because when I'm doing it, it's one and done. I'm not going to recut material. So that's usually what I tell them is, you know, it's going to be similar to how I've done videos in the past, similar to how I've done sign videos in the past. And if you want a video, like, there's no approval process. It's this, you want it done, I'll make one, but you get no say in how it's done. Yeah. Because I'm not actually marketing their product or marketing for them. I'm just making a sign that happens to have their logo in it. And some companies really like that. Now, there are companies that I've done them with when, say it's a woodworking company and they have a product that I could actually use in the process of making the sign itself, where I would try to incorporate the product at the same time because of the upcharge. And it allows you, honestly, to even upcharge more because you're using their products in the video too. Right. So it became a whole different, unique opportunity that I just didn't see coming.
Right. And the other thing you can do with video is when you've actually shown the equipment in there, even if it's not an Epilog, if it's, you know, you're using a CNC machine or anything like that, highlight that company as well, because you're just going to get exponential growth off that video then, because they're going to want to be able to focus on that too. They're going to feature it on their Instagram, their Facebook pages.
They do share it.
Yeah, exactly. Marketers in every one of these companies want that kind of content. Yeah. So, you know, think about how you could actually use that relationship, not only to get your video out more, but then you might create a relationship like this too, where they're coming to you to get content.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think, like, starting out, charging for that's going to be hard if you have no video base already. This didn't start happening until I had, 7,000 subscribers on a YouTube channel. So it wasn't immediate. Starting out, I did just do it as part of the sign making process. Right. And I would let them use the videos in their marketing, which actually helped get my business name out there more. So starting out, it's more of like a trade. And then as you start growing, that's where you could really start bringing in revenue from that process. Exactly. All right. When it comes to video, now we've talked a lot about how you can use video not only to market yourself, but to market other people's businesses while making products for them, which is unique. Now, me personally, and with permission, I might add, I wrapped my machine. The outside of the machine has no logos anymore. Epilog is gone. But
temporarily,
it does come off. Yes. But what I've noticed is when I create videos, 99% of the time, I don't show the outside of the machine anyway. Right. The 0.1% was when I customized the machine and showed the outside of the machine, and that was it. Yeah. Other than that, I really don't show the outside anyway. Now, some machine manufacturers are clever, and I know this was planned. You have the Epilog logo on the gantry of the machine. Right. It was planned. 100%. Oh, yeah. Now, I can imagine it's because if people are creating videos of engraving for social media, your brand is there. I'm assuming that that's the reason why it happened. Would you agree?
Yes, yes. No, I specifically asked engineering to put that on there. They questioned it. They didn't really understand why it needed to be there. And then, you know, as I showed them videos and here's what's going to be focused on, correct, they got it.
So if you're not a laser manufacturer, if you're just an outsider and you have used lasers but you're not deep into the community, you're not going to know the brand colors of every brand. Right. And you're not going to know that blue is one of Epilog's colors in most cases. So just seeing a blue gantry, you're gonna be like, whatever. Like there's multiple lasers that are blue. So having that name there is definitely strategic. Now, what I think is interesting is we've been talking about how videos can help people. Videos can help their business. from just showing off what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another thing that I don't think gets talked about a lot in a lot of ways is, yes, you might get a company to share social media. You might get them to share some content that you've created. But if you can create videos that are highlighting something you're making,
right,
but it's also showing, say, the Epilog brand in the video, and you reach out to the, whoever runs Instagram or the Facebook or whatever, and say, hey, I made this video with my Epilog. Do you think you'd be willing to share it on social media? To me, that's almost a win-win, because you get content that honestly, made by a client content, goes a lot further than, the industrial, typical marketing type of content, because it's an actual client using your machine, showing how they make an actual product for a customer. And for them, they would get the benefit of, you are sharing it to all of your customers. Now, keep in mind, most of your customers are also laser owners. But you have to think that there's some people that don't own lasers that still check out Epilog because they either see what they're doing, or they had heard about them, or they got one at work,
right?
Whatever it might be. So from that perspective, do you find it being valuable for people, for the video side there, to work with the machine manufacturer to try to create videos that help both ways?
I definitely agree. It really comes down to a video created by a customer is going to be so much more authentic than anything we can create corporately. A corporate video is always going to have that voice of the corporation.
Yes.
And it's an important part of marketing, is keeping your voice consistent across everything you create, because people associate that voice with the company at that point.
Yes.
And when a customer's doing something, it can have a totally different voice to it. It can have a different feel. Everyone can be different, and it's still going to feel more important to the viewer than anything I can create in-house.
It's not going to feel like a sales pitch.
Exactly. And that's what we don't want, because, there was always the joke of the black hat versus the white hat marketers. Okay. Especially early on in search engine days, when there were a lot of tricks to move up in Google.
Okay.
And I associate the same thing now with this type of piece, where we're not trying to market to you if the product's not going to be a good fit for you.
Good.
That's what a white hat marketer does.
Yeah.
They want to be able to, I want the laser to be in the hands of someone who is going to make money with it, that it's going to be a useful tool for. And I think that's really important, because if we were trying to just get it into everyone's hands, there's a lot of people that aren't going to be successful, and that's only going to hurt us down the line too, because they're not going to be that referral. They're not going to be someone who's going to say, this is a good company to work with. Yeah. And our strongest customer base are those that have come in from referrals from other customers, because that's a much easier sale for us, because they have already heard from someone else, this is a good brand. They stand behind their product, and they're going to help you be successful.
And I do find that the best people that are the ones referring. So in my case, it would be me referring a customer to you.
Oh yeah.
Is when they watch my videos, it's not, and I'll admit, it's not always sunshine and rainbows.
No.
Like, I try to do it so that it's authentic. And if I have a problem, it's like, yes, I have, but I got it worked through. It may happen. It may occur to you. But just know that they stand by it and they will help you fix it.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
And that's not what I've seen with other companies and some of the people that do the referrals there. Because you guys are a little bit different. And honestly, up to, say, until I met you, you did not work with anybody. Is that true?
That's not true, but
okay.
We didn't work with as much with someone that was on a small business scale. It was more so large woodworkers, things like that.
That's okay. So you did the HGTVs.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
And when we started working together and started doing videos together, I will agree, it's a lot harder to, I guess, quote, get a referral, how do you want to say it, bonus or whatever you want to call it, right? And other companies are offering that when you buy the machine, you instantly get access to get a referral code and you could make money by selling more machines. Mm-hmm. To me, that almost seems like a disservice in a lot of ways, because you're giving people the ability to refer without actually using the machine yet. And have you seen that open weird like conversations with people?
No, we don't run into that quite as much because we're so much more focused on the industrial side. That,
I would agree.
You know, we could build into the price of each one of our machines that referral price, because every single owner of a hobbyist machine, if they're smart, they're using one of those referral codes out there.
100%.
Yeah. So they're already building an increased price in, not only for that referral, but also for the savings that the customer's receiving too. But those referrals aren't as important because they're not giving the referral because they believe in the brand. They're giving the referral because they want to make that money.
And that's ultimately what my question really comes down to, is when it comes to you as a company and you're getting referrals from people, the value of having a smaller customer base that refers and having less people having that ability to refer is really all built around, you want a strong lead to begin with. By having just anybody, I mean, that you're going to have people that are like, oh yeah, you should get an Epilog. They're great. But there's no expectation of kickback or any kind of fee to do so. We just do it because we believe in the machines, we believe in the brand. And I imagine that it's a lot easier to convert them and keep them as a customer by approaching it that way. Because I know a lot of people on my subscriber side have asked me, like, well, would Epilog be willing to do like an affiliate program? I'm like, I think the way that you do it is smarter from a company standpoint, because you want the strongest lead possible coming in the door if it is a referral.
Right.
You don't want them coming to you just because somebody can make money off of it, because they may not be right for the machine. Like the machine may not be something that makes sense for that customer. And I do 100% agree with how you guys have marketed as well with distributors, is you are not going to be like, yes, Epilog is your only option.
No.
Every conversation I've ever had is always, well, what do you want to do with it?
Yes.
And what do you want to make? And that will drive whether or not this machine is right for you.
And that's part of why we've got such a strong relationship with our distributors, because, most of them have been around almost as long as I have, if not longer. I mean, that's crazy for a company to be able to say that they've got distribution that has 20 to 30 years of experience. Yeah. And the reason they're able to do that is we've got a similar voice in how we talk to customers. Don't badmouth the competition.
Well, and there's no need for that.
There's no need for that. And as a marketer, that drives me crazy to see when people do that, when they say, that is garbage, this is great. Because there's never that garbage to great kind of ratio when you're looking at two products.
Correct.
It's, here's why this one's good for you, here's what we can offer. And our distribution is great at selling that way. And I love that about them. And not only that, but they've got that experience that when a customer has a problem, you're not talking to a salesperson that's just moved on to the next sale that they're going to make.
Correct.
They're really good about saying, okay, let's get you up and running again. Let's make sure that this is fixed.
Yes.
And, I think that's part of what makes our brand even stronger, is having that backup from the distribution side.
So you brought up a good point about not bad-mouthing competition.
Right.
So as a laser business owner, we all have competition. You are going to gain more respect and most likely get the client if you focus on what you do. You focus on why it's a good fit for them, and how you're going to benefit them versus bad mouthing your competitor down the street. Because to me, that's never been appealing to me. If you badmouth your competition, I don't want to work with you. And honestly, when I was buying my machine, I visited laser companies that did badmouth competition, which was an instant turnoff for me. And when I went to Epilog, and I specifically asked, I set up, Steve is going to kill me for this, but I set him up because, so Steve Cortesy, great guy, one of your distributors.
Yes.
I went to him, didn't know him. I went up to him at the booth at the trade show and specifically asked, well, why should I go with Epilog over a Trotec? Right? Because to be honest, you're competitors.
Yeah.
The machines are both great.
Yes.
And I set him up to say whatever he wanted. And he was like, well, Trotec's good, but here's why Epilog has strengths, and let me show you what an Epilog does. And that was it. And he showed me specifically about Epilog.
That makes me so happy.
He didn't badmouth anybody. He didn't talk bad about any other company. He only focused on what your machines can do and what that experience would be like.
Yes.
And I think honestly, that is what sold me on the brand. Regardless of the fact that I came in kind of already biased towards Epilog because I learned on an Epilog. I pre-owned an Epilog. I had good experience with owning a smaller machine. So when I bought a bigger one, I already knew the platform. I was already familiar with the software. It kind of made sense to go that route. And ever since that conversation, it's like, I don't expect to ever leave using an Epilog because of the people that are behind the brand.
Yeah. You know, and that's why I've been with the company for 21 years.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of companies that you stick around with because,
Definitely.
well, I mean, it doesn't hurt that I get to play with the laser whenever I want.
Yeah, that's true.
And I get to talk to so many different industries. You know, that's part of what's exciting about marketing is when you're not doing the same thing every day. And having a laser is exactly that because of the versatility of it.
So with all that we've talked about, because we talked about a lot in the last 2 videos.
So much.
Is there anything that you feel we've left out that we didn't really touch on that you think would be valuable?
You know, the biggest thing I think, the biggest takeaway for me from our conversation is everything we've talked about comes down to one thing, which is really customer journey.
Yes.
You know, and this is something that we focus on at Epilog all the time. It's everything from that bringing the client in when they're a basic lead to the time they've bought to the time that, you know, they're an experienced owner to when they're referring someone else, when they become a fan of your company. And that's really what it all comes down to for a small business, I think, is understanding that entire customer journey. Don't jump steps. That you need to take it from, okay, how am I going to bring this person in? How am I going to prove my value? How am I going to show them that I respect them and we've got a mutual relationship where we both want to be successful to the point where they're referring more business to you. You know, how do you get to that point? And a lot of what we talked about today goes to that. You know, it's from creating the video that they can use as well.
Yeah.
It's, you know, packaging it well. It's showing them that you're a professional brand. That's really what it all comes down to for me, customer journey.
So if people watching the video want to, well, for one, if they have other questions we haven't answered, definitely put them in the comments.
Yes, please do.
We'll do our best to answer those, whether that's me getting the questions together and then just getting the answers from you and doing a video about it. However that comes about, we'll do our best to answer the questions.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to if people want to contact Epilog, whether it's they own a machine, obviously if they have problems, whatever, technical support. There's the Facebook group for Epilog Laser owners.
Right.
There's Instagram that they can follow that I think is pretty responsive.
Yeah.
But what, in your mind, is the best way for people to get in contact with Epilog or see machines if they're interested in lasers? what is your suggestion?
You know, if you're interested in seeing the laser, go up to our website, fill out the form, say what you're interested in. We're going to send you an entire packet out with some samples. A lot of times we'll put in something specific to that application if there's something that we have available. And the distributor will be in contact with you about setting up a demonstration, seeing where in the process you are, see if you're ready to be able to see a laser in front of you. And when you do that demonstration, what I suggest is bring in some of your own artwork, bring in some of your own materials. Don't let it be a pre-canned demonstration.
Correct.
And I know our distributors prefer that because they would rather be able to do something live in front of you that you're asking for.
Yes.
Because they get to showcase the machine even better that way. That's specific to your interests. If you just have a question for tech support, email tech@epiloglaser.com. We've got a live chat up there as well. Some great guys on the tech support team are manning that. If you've got a question for me, just email sales@epiloglaser.com. Jessica answers all of those. She'll direct them to me and we'll get your questions answered.
Overall, along with all of those contacts, I do also answer questions when I can. So you can reach out to me as well. Now, I will say with the demos, it, to me, is mandatory to bring your own materials, bring your own designs, so they make something that you want to see. That if you want to make this product, you need to know that the machine you're doing it on fits those needs.
Yeah.
And if they aren't willing to do that,
that should be a total red flag for you, because if they're not comfortable taking your unique artwork or your unique material and run something on it, that tells you a lot about how comfortable they are on the machine, because every machine's going to do things well.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to highlight the things that it does the best on a sample they've already done. And that's great to see. But this just takes the next level of your test. So
personally, I push the limits of what they're probably going to be comfortable with.
Shocking knowing you.
I know, right? But they've always been willing to try it. They may not get it right away.
Right.
But I've also noticed that some distributors will say, you know what, I'm having trouble right now. Let me do some research. Let me contact headquarters.
Yeah.
And I will get you an answer on whether or not this will actually work.
You know, we've got an applications lab that runs, especially on the industrial side, a lot of times it'll be a material that's a specific metal that they want to see time trials and things on. We've got that available.
So that's a good point too, is even if you're not going to a demo, if you want to know if a material will work or if it is okay to laser, because there are some materials with like PVC, which you're not supposed to laser. Right. If you have a material and you want to find out if it's okay, how you can do it, whatever else, at least in my experience, you can send that to Epilog and have them test it and provide some basis of what the settings might be. Right. Or if they're not, it's something they really don't recommend you work with.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing to do is check out the material safety data sheet on that product before you send it to us, because that's really the safest, is make sure there's no PVC in it.
And that's a good point too, is I have contacted technical support before and said, hey, I'm looking at this material. Do you know if it's safe to laser? They said, well, get us the safety data sheet. We'll check it out. Sent them the sheet. They looked it over. They're like, well, it's okay to laser. We do recommend, precautions for some things, like reflectivity maybe.
Sure.
Whatever it might be. But they will get you that answer. And I think that's something that before you just go on and try it, if you don't know if it's okay to work with it, get that question answered first. Yeah. You don't always have to send in a swatch. You can just do the material data sheet. Because I've also seen products like magnetic sheets from companies that used to be okay to laser, but they're not anymore because they changed the adhesive. And, that's not always very, how do I put it, well known.
Well publicized, yeah.
Yeah, they don't talk about it.
Right.
They don't say you but they don't say you can't.
Very rarely are they going to say laser safe or not.
Yeah, exactly. So is there anything else that you feel we need to cover or talk about that we haven't really touched on, even though we've touched on a lot?
I think we're good. I think
Yeah.
we've covered a lot. Please send in your questions, like you said, because yeah, we'd be fascinated to see them, and we can always set up another one of these if we need to.
And if you're ever at trade shows at Epilog's it's always a good idea to just check them out if you want to see one. See what they do if you don't own one.
Meet the marketing people that are there.
And honestly, I feel like trade shows are one of the best ways to research machines because there's multiple vendors there.
Exactly.
You'll get to see a lot of things in one day. And you'll really get to know the company based on the people that represent them at those trade shows. Yes. So thank you for all of your time. Thank you for coming this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for
so thanks for everybody for watching. If you found it helpful, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, and definitely turn on notifications for future videos. One thing that I do want to try to do is create I would say, demo checklist of things that you should do, maybe even some sample files that they can take with them. That's material recommendations to take. So I'm going to try to work with you on that so that we give you the most valuable information for a demo as you go to those. So thank you for your time. If you also want to follow along on Instagram, it's @MakerExperiment for me and @Epilog Laser for them. And be sure to check out the Epilog link in the, I would say, in the description if you want to find out more about the machines. And if you have questions, again, put them in the comments below or DM them to us, and we'll do our best to answer those. So thank you for your time, and we'll see you in the next video.